Hello and welcome. Anyone who's been to Merchant City Yoga on a Sunday knows how much I love catching up with everyone over a cup of my freshly brewed spiced chai. These Sunday chai sessions really bring everyone together. A true celebration of friendship, community and connection. And as these COVID restrictions continue, I want to try and capture some of that magic and share it with you at home. So I've invited some familiar faces from our MCY family to chat with me online over a cuppa. I'm affectionately calling them the chai sessions. Pop the kettle on, get yourself comfy and come and join us. So thanks Nicole for joining me for a wee cuppa.
Yeah, cheers. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. So for folk who don't know you, just want to let them know that you teach our structured Introduction to Ashtanga course and also our Ashtanga for Beginners class, our regular weekly class, as well as doing lots of other stuff with your yoga teaching and practice. And before we get into that, just for those of you who haven't met Nicole, Nicole, do you want to maybe just tell people about what brought you to yoga, how you got started?
Yeah, I think my story is probably quite similar to many other people, whilst we're all unique and have our own backgrounds and what brings us to the practice itself. But I started coming to a yoga class during a working lunch with my boss at the time, many moons and years ago. And they just encouraged it at lunchtime, and we were all on all fours doing lion breathing. We were breathing out your mouth, and I thought it was the weirdest thing ever because you feel really vulnerable and quite humiliated that you have to do it. But for some reason, I kept going back because it was space for me to come inwards to my mind, to step away from whatever I was doing on my working day, my personal life. And it just, it gave me a lot. For whatever reason it was at the time, I just kept coming back. And then from there, the practice is universal. So I've moved around a lot from many cities, and wherever I am, I find practice there with other teachers. And I've always found that I'm my better self when I give myself the space to practice yoga. And for that reason, I've always just kept coming back, and now I get to share the practice with others as well, which is nice. So I found a lot mentally for it as well as physically. There's a lot more than just the physical movements, whilst they're very, very important. I find a lot in my mind with the practice, which is nice.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it, how we all get that awkward, uncomfortable feeling. And, you know, I mean, even now, if I'm practicing with a teacher that I've never practiced with before, I can get that just a little bit awkward, a little bit uncomfortable. But certainly making noise in class makes a lot of people feel a little bit.
It does. And now, probably quite cheekily as a teacher, I get people to do it because I probably know that it pushed me to a point. And I mean, that is meeting at the humility and the resistance of yoga in many different ways. But it's good to have that experience and then challenge it again and find the laughter in it, the humour in it as well, I guess. Which is
and coming back for more as well. Something definitely gets under your skin. So what is it that keeps you coming back?
Physically, I'm always my better person with my body, knowing that I've moved around, but mentally you're encouraged to find your breath in the practice, and that can be quite challenging at times. I come back because I always find that I'm my better person, as I've said, but I have a challenge every day, and that might just be to sit there and breathe, or it might be that I'm finding a headstand really challenging. But eventually, over time, you always see progression, and you always see that point of, I've just been able to do something that I couldn't have done. Not that that's important, but it definitely grounds you to where you are right now, and it brings you into the present, the yoga practice, the tools that we all do and share. So for that reason, I come back. It's a community as well. I've met so many amazing people through yoga, practicing yoga, listening to other people talking about yoga, sharing the practice as well. And that doesn't have to be just the physical practice. It can be learning about yoga philosophy, doing pranayama practice as well. So yeah, there's many joys. I could probably write a big book, but it always just draws me back in because there's joy in the practice. And for that, selfishly always want more. So.
Yeah, and maybe a book is in the future, Nicole.
It might be.
Yeah, who knows?
It'll be like marking my yoga essays again, Judy. You're like, Nicole, you have to be concise. Yeah.
So, like I said, you teach the Ashtanga Beginners and the Introduction course, but you also do a lot of other teaching out with that as well, and that's what I wanted to talk to you about today. And for example, I know that you teach a regular class for a charity called Find Your Feet, and I wondered if you could tell us a little bit more about how you found them or they found you, and how you came to be involved, and maybe what is involved in teaching that class.
Yeah, a lot more about Finding Your Feet. So they're a charity based in Paisley now in Glasgow. They're a charity that promote the well-being and community for those who have recently had amputees, or perhaps have had an accident, or through many different means have found themselves with an amputation. That could mean that they're below the knee amputees, above the knee. They could have a double leg amputee, one arm, upper limbs. So many different ways that they could just wake up a new day and find themselves in a new circumstance. Finding Your Feet then bring people together to have a community of people that everybody has a common ground, but then they do lots of social inclusion events, and one of those events is yoga. So I was really lucky to work with the charity from 2019 now. The global pandemic has made me miss a full year, so I always go to say last year, but really it was 2 years ago because we've missed a full year. But quite luckily, I live with a good friend now, but at the time we moved into a flat with a girl called Nikki, who is now a good friend, who sadly lost her lower part of her leg a few years ago, and she works with the charity. Through that connection, I found the charity, and when I was certified to share the practice of yoga, for many different reasons, it brings myself joy. I believe that it is for many other people and for everybody. It's that you just as a person have to be empowered and be taught to know what's good for you and your own ability. The first time Nikki and I were housemates, we practiced together. I actually broke her leg. We were doing upside down and various things. When I say broke her leg, I didn't. If Finding Your Feet are watching, a bolt just came out that was already loose, but it is a funny story because it sounds like I broke her leg, but I didn't. But we were able to work together to find what works well for her with the different ability that she has. We all have different ability, but I think when you are disabled, or you feel that you have something that's different from a wider group of people, you can automatically put a barrier up and say, I can't do that. But it's perhaps that you haven't been taught the way that you can do it. And from that relationship, I got to then ask Finding Your Feet if that would be something that they would be willing to work with me on. And naturally, I was new to sharing the practice, so I had to be honest with letting them know that I was working with them and learning with them just as much as they were learning with me. But it was a really beautiful step because we kept the classes really small. We had students come from all over Glasgow coming to Paisley to practice yoga, and we really just worked with where we all were, coming back to the breath. We have people in wheelchairs, we have people who are only grounded, and we have people who can do quite a few different parts of a standing and seating posture. But the practice of yoga has encouraged people then to move with their body as well as their breath to points that they maybe didn't know that they could do before. And it's just a really encouraging practice to know that now that we've moved online, for those students that were able to meet physically with us, we've been able to keep the classes up on a bi-weekly basis for 30 minutes. And they now have that community together online to still practice with lots of different types of yoga that I'll upload for them to do. And we've got really good feedback. I think yoga is a universal practice, and I think there's a widespread culture online for good and bad reasons that suggests you have to touch your toes to do yoga. But if you are able to work with a teacher that works with you and your own ability, you'll find that there is something that we all can do. We just need to know that we have that step to learn where that is. So luckily, I'm very lucky that I get to work with a community of people that want to listen to me and we laugh together, we cry together, we make a lot of noises together, but that's yoga. So that I've been working with Finding Your Feet now for 2 years, and hopefully once the global pandemic blows over like a big storm, we'll get to practice again physically, which is really exciting.
Yeah, it's so lovely, isn't it? The way that you've been able to meet them where they are, but also they met you as a teacher where you were, and you and them have managed to kind of grow together and evolve the program together. So what sort of feedback are you getting from the participants?
Good feedback. I think there was a lot of hesitation because of perhaps of what you assume you have to do in yoga. But you and I know, or any practitioner knows that's been doing it for a long time, that yoga meets you where you are. You just need to take that leap of faith or that step. And the feedback's really, really amazing. Some people can be really quite amazed at just how much they get from it mentally, coming back to the breath, but they don't necessarily know that they're doing that at the time. So just finding that space for themselves. A lot of people have got their full families involved because we are now online, which is really nice. So, you'll have someone practicing with their daughter or their grandparent. So that's really nice because it's a community. It brings people together wherever they are. And I think the feedback's been good. There's been a few students who have wanted different things because we are online. That does bring boundaries. We have to be honest that it's not an ideal way of practicing. I can't physically see you, but that's when you can then work with someone one-to-one in a different way. But the feedback's been really good. So I'm quite blessed to be given that opportunity to work with them, and honestly knowing where we both are as well within the practice, which is good.
And what has working with them over the past couple of years brought you personally?
Oh, I'm going to use the word joy again. But I think challenges, of course, but practicing with anyone brings its challenges. As a teacher, perhaps as a new teacher, we talk a lot about imposter syndrome, and it's moving into a class and thinking, these people are looking directly at me and they have so many points of assumptions or judgments of what I think they think I should be. And that brings a massive big challenge. So you have to step away from that and be entirely yourself. So that's taught me a lot. I think sharing a practice, particularly with people or a group of people that have a different way of practicing than I have, because we have to then meet each other with empathy and respect for where they are and where I am, and marry the tools together to then practice with our own abilities. And also I've learned a lot of patience through practicing, not only with Finding Your Feet, but with anyone. Respect for different students and their bodies and where they are, and knowing that it's very important for people to know that it's not a walk in the park, and it's very hard to tell people that without them actually experiencing it themselves. So it's quite nice to see that my hard work, or perhaps all my anxiety and my nerves of sharing practice, however, brings so much joy because they are getting that path as well. They're moving on their own path as much as I am, but beautifully so. We're universally connecting with yoga. So it's brought me a lot of joy, Joy, which is nice.
And that's a word you use a lot.
I do. If I was to get a tattoo, perhaps I'd get that. Sorry, Mum, I don't have a tattoo. It is. And I guess, I don't know, people say I am quite a happy-go-lucky person, or I've done a lot of practice in Buddhism, and that of course teaches you to go outside and smell the flowers. And I think a lot of the time the spiritual parts of yoga can be like pushed aside, rather than just focusing on just the physical parts. But I don't know, perhaps the yoga practice brings me a lot of joy and encourages me to be more of a sunshine. But there's dark days too. We have to be honest with that. But a lot of joy. It has brought me a lot of joy. So charity work, I think there's a lot more that we can do to help other people. And I've always used the motto, do good, feel good. You're selfishly helping other people to feel good, but it's a selfless act. You're giving someone your energy. And that's yoga, unifying the energy that we all have and bringing someone joy, but giving yourself joy at the same time.
So one of the other things that I love and appreciate about you is that's not where it ends. That's not where your giving and your charity work ends. So I know that you feel it's important to talk about mental health, and also you've put your energy where your mouth is as well in organised events to support charities that are focused on that aspect. And I wondered if you could tell us a little bit more about what got you involved in that, and again what that brings to you as well, like maybe put it in context for folk.
Yeah, so separately, I guess from my Do Good Feel Good challenge, you do selfishly get a lot from helping other people, but you can also see like a drip of water in the ocean, the ripples of waves just trickling on through from a tiny little act to how that can benefit so many other people. Your goodness shines goodness on someone else, but that may then create goodness or plant a seed of goodness for them to then blossom into more goodness to help other people because they felt good from someone else's kind act. So one of the first challenges I set myself when I certified to have the grace to share yoga was to take a charity class for SAMH. So that's the Scottish Association for Mental Health. And they're a charity that promote and support people through many different means for mental health barriers and understanding what you can do, and an outreach programme for many people across Scotland. So thanks to Judy and the good folks of Finding Your Feet, you allowed me the space in Glasgow to host a class up to 30 people to raise some funds for SAMH, which was really nice, but also to raise awareness for what the charity was and to raise awareness for what mental health is and all its different dark and beautiful ways of how it can affect us. Yoga then allowed us to all come together, spend our pennies because we're fortunate enough to be able to give money back to then push that money elsewhere. So that naturally, of course, brought me a lot of joy because it brought community together. We all got together. I asked people in a light-hearted way to wear reindeer hats, Santa hats. My good mum, baked lots of cakes and treats for everyone to practice with. I mean, who doesn't like to do yoga and have tea and cake? But rightly so, the bigger picture was that we're sharing the idea that we can all come together and help others. And whilst we might not be working for SAMH, the charity itself, it allowed us to continue the idea that this is something that we, or people that we all know, can suffer with. And it keeps that conversation going. And so luckily we raised just over £500, I believe it was, for the charity at that point. And I think that's then led to me wanting to do more to help other people at the same time. And yoga's then allowed me to reach out to other charities to do that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think it's part of our practice, isn't it? And maybe even part of our responsibility as practitioners and teachers to actually be part of the community that surrounds us and try and offer our help and support. And like I just firmly believe that in lifting others up, we are lifted up ourselves. And I guess it's one of the things that gets me a little bit concerned about some of the modern image of yoga. It's, it seems to be very focused on self, and like you say, like, in helping other people, we are maybe being a little bit selfish, but ultimately it's for the sort of greater good, I would suggest, because like I say, in helping other people, we are definitely helped ourselves. There's no question about it.
And then it gets more people together for people to be talking on what are you doing today on actually going to a charity event for SAMH, what do? They do this, and then that ripple effect, can go out to other people as well. I went to one of your charity events with the studio, and luckily one of the founders of the organisers came along to speak to us before we went into lovely yoga nidra and meditation session. So whilst I got a lot from that, doing the practice, I couldn't stop crying at the start because we were told of how all of the money that everybody raised together would benefit other people. And I've been very privileged in the world, but also I've worked many different jobs. I've went to university, which again is a privilege, but I had 3 different jobs, worked every weekend, worked in the evenings, and probably I'm quite stubborn, so I don't necessarily ask for help. But you know, wherever we grew up, I was around people that are struggling and need help. And knowing that there's charities out there that get people together to have that support, and you can then contribute to that support, was a big thing. And I think it's important to keep that conversation going, like you were saying, because it encourages other people to help other people. Over the last year, I've been lucky to work with Glasgow Caledonians Cancer Support Society for Scotland, and they are a student-led society that raise funds for Cancer Support Scotland. And we've hosted 2 yoga sessions in the last year that's raised now almost over £200, which is amazing. But they are similarly a small charity that, you know, gather together people who are affected directly by cancer, but also their families who are suffering from either grief or just emotional support from helping people with, you know, a disease of any type. And again, I think it's such a small act to be able to pricelessly share your energy, but the knock-on effect for that is greater and a lot larger. And that's, again, I guess, a point of yoga. If we look at the 8 limbs, it's not just asana, it's not just pranayama. They're sharing that kindness and compassion and having empathy towards other people whilst you're bringing it inwards as well. And so luckily, I have a tool now that we can share together and create that bigger picture.
Yeah, we're so lucky, aren't we, to have yoga in our lives. And I mean, I know personally, I feel very fortunate that I have teachers like you teaching with me at the studio as well. So I think we'll maybe wrap it up there. Nicole, was there anything else that you wanted to share with us before we scoot off?
It's a complete joy to be able to have chai with everyone. I'll look forward to the day that we can run around and have some chai and cake with whoever's made some yummy cake after sessions. And that for anyone that's practicing yoga with us or out with the studio, just continue what you're doing, stay on the path of your own journey. And for anyone that's thinking about it, just try it. You know, be kind to yourself, be curious. The first few sessions you do might not be fun, you might be uncomfortable, but that's life. Life isn't always a joy. So stick at it, speak to your teacher, have a giggle if you've made some noises, because we all do. And yeah, have a cup of tea after and just smile wherever you are. It will be sunny one day. But otherwise, thank you for having me on and having a cup of tea with me too.
Thanks, Nicole. We'll definitely get that chai in person, hopefully sooner rather than later. Thank you.
I can't wait. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed our chat. If you've got any questions, you can email me or find us on social media. And until we can return to our Sunday chai sessions in the studio, I'll see you here next time.